What up? Wade here. Welcome back to the Wade Alter Show. So today what I want to talk about is freedom first. Putting the freedom at the forefront, making every decision you have related to how can I gain more freedom? Because in today's society, if you look at the corporate culture, the 9-to-5 grind, it's almost like it's like you're in the matrix to where every year you might make a little bit more money. You might get a little bit more, perks that come with the job. You might get a little bit nicer insurance or bumping up your 401k or even some profit sharing. But it's almost like you're in the matrix where you're in this little bubble and it's getting harder and harder. You're more dependent on the man. You're more dependent on the system instead of saying, I don't want to settle for the status quo. I don't want to settle for 10 or 14 vacation days a year and be stuck into this cubicle or this office. Like I said, after a while, you might get a nice office, but still it's working for someone else. And so I want to talk about today how to turn, if you got that side hustle, you got that idea, that business, it's starting to make a little bit of an income, how to turn that side hustle into a full-time revenue stream so you can do what you love full-time and really have that freedom to live where you want, work when you want, and everything else that goes along with it. And so what kind of inspired this was I was talking to a client and we kind of came up with a game plan where he's all of a sudden doing really well in his business. He's like, man, I think within 6 to 8 months, I might be able to, stop doing this and do the business full-time. And the first thing I did was push back a little bit and say, what stops you from doing this in 3 months versus 8 months? And he said it was just kind of like a gut level instinct. And he kind of had ideas of where he wanted the business to go and how much he wanted to save. And so I went through a process with him of certain sort of tasks and homework that he's going to be doing between the next call because I haven't talked to him since then. And I was like, I realized I had done this for myself, but now having, maybe close to a dozen clients that have quit their job and are building businesses and they're really kind of scaling their business now, doing what they love full time. There's a process that I've really refined that I think can really give you the confidence of knowing when the right time really is. And so here's what it is. Step 1, look through your bank account statements and get the credit card statements of the last 24 months. And to do this, sometimes you might need to get, you might have to call your bank up and have them mail you them because you can't download them from 2 years ago. But I think it's really important to try to get at least 1 year. But 2 years it gives you more confidence. The more data you have of knowing, okay, how much money was I spending on a month-by-month basis? And even better if I can break this up into categories of, restaurants versus rent versus travel and car payments and things like that. And start putting them, the basic, just start off with what was my lifestyle? What is my personal lifestyle? This is rent. This is basically everything outside of the business. Secondly, if the business has been going on for 2 years or whenever that started, have another category for those expenses. And ideally, what you want to do is go back and start averaging out and looking at, okay, on a month-by-month basis, how much is it going to cost me to really live, to really survive? And okay, what can I do kind of moving forward from that to kind of propagate out the next 12 months? And so what you want to do is look ahead then and say, okay, if I was running this business full-time, how much money, how much profit do I need to be bringing in? And so what this also presupposes is you're thinking about things like taxes and everything else there. So make sure to put those in. Also, certain months you might have a big expenditure. Like for me, I used to do Adobe, the Creative Suite, and it would only charge once a year. What I would do for something like that is I'd average it out over 12 months. And so I don't want to get too bogged down into the details here because there are a lot of little nuances to this. But start with as crude of a model as possible. And then when you're doing, like I said, you want to go forward and go, okay, let's look at the last 24 months. What was revenue? What were the averages? Now let's move for the next 12 months. And something I've seen every single time somebody did this, including myself, and I've gotten better and better at predicting this, but I still kind of do it, is you want to go as conservative as possible for the next 12 months. Because, and even better, down the road, you can get, I have graphs with mine and you can go super complex and sophisticated with this sort of, I guess if I didn't even say this is with an Excel sheet, something like that, or a Google, Excel sheet. And so what you want to get to the point of, again, making it as conservative as possible, maybe not even focusing on much growth. If it was just consistent, if nothing even changed, how much profit is coming in, how much expenses are going out, how much revenue, what are all these different variables, put them in place, average it out. And what's really important is to get conservative, is average it out based on trailing 12 months versus future 12. Because all of a sudden you might have like a big win and you got twice as much revenue this month and you're like, oh my God, this is the new normal. And that might not be the case. And so what you want to do is make decisions, expense decisions from the most conservative And then sort of goals and things like that related to kind of the more like pie in the sky of like, oh man, if we get this growth, what do we need to do? You want to have that one too, kind of maybe for your ManOS or for your vision statement, stuff like that. But when it comes to this sheet here, this is getting as conservative as possible. And what this does, it really gives you a sort of blueprint. One, it really gives you the heartbeat of your business. You can really see from this. I guess the final thing that I would put in is like, okay, what is the net worth of the business? Where is it really at here? What assets do I have? How much do I have saved? Is there anything like that in this? How much debt do I have? And what does it equal? And so every month, instead of just going like, oh, is there more money in the bank account than last month? Oh, I wonder if I should maybe like get an employee. This really gives you those decisions in a very objective way. And the ultimate decision of what I'm getting here from going from side hustle to full-time business owner is there enough that I can live off of this? Is there enough there? And so then the next thing that I think is really important, that's stage one. Stage two is then figuring out what your buffer is. And so I've said this, I think, in other podcasts, but what's really interesting is if you had $10,000 in the bank, that's very different when you have a corporate gig versus when you're an entrepreneur. Because $10,000 when you got a job, you know you're going to get income. You know you're going to get that salary next week or next month. And so 10K, that's like 10K. It's like solid. It's something you can hold on to. But when you're an entrepreneur, you might have 1 month where you're making 20 grand or 200 grand or whatever the magnitude of your business is. But then the next month, you might have half that, or you might have 10% of that. I've had fluctuations of, 90% at times and 200, 300% to the upper margin. I had one client who had done 3 months of work for one of his clients and was owed like $85,000 or something like that. So there's all of these little variables and these risks that go into play of, needing, if you want the freedom, you got to take the risk associated with that. And so what you want to do is make sure to set aside that emergency fund with at least 3 months of, if you look at that backwards trailing, look at the last year of what you've been spending for your personal expenses, the business expenses, and then average that out and then multiply it by 3 to get 3 months. Ideally, if you want to be like, oh yeah, I'm ready to rock, have 6 months. Because what happens is just this psychological shift when it comes to like, okay, could I, stop working and really do this full time? If you have a 6-month buffer, you could literally completely fail, make $0, lose whatever sort of, just the expenses, and you're losing. If you have 6 months, within that time, you can go get another job. You'll figure something out within the business. If you're doing it full time, imagine if you're only spending 10 to 20 hours a week on this versus 50 to 60. You don't think in a 6-month period, half a year, you're going to be able to pull some shit out of your ass to really be like, oh, here's a new way to create some revenue from that place of scarcity and that sense of urgency to really figure things out. Or the other hand is find another job. And I've had a few times where clients did stop working, they did their business full time, and then through the process of being an entrepreneur realized, you know what, this just isn't actually for me. This is a little bit, whether it was too early or whether they realized, they love the team environment, they love the corporate environment. Your goals really evolve as you get more data points. I've seen it every single time that's happened. They were able to, 1, get a new job within a month or 2 of making that decision, but 2, it was always a significantly better job where they were getting paid significantly more than they would have if they would have stayed where they were and just waited for that sort of promotion to come in. They really leapfrogged ahead. And secondly, there was a couple people that when they got into the interview and they were talking about, okay, why did you stop your last job? And they were talking about how they started a business. Some people that turned them off. And that's probably not the type of company you would want to work for anyways, as you moved ahead if that was the path. But the offers they ultimately got, a lot of the interview process was about like, tell me about the business. What happened there? Like, oh man, I'm envious. I always thought about doing something like that. And how does that relate to what you want to do here? Like, where's your inspiration? And because of that experience, you can even better elaborate and explain why you want to go back and what you're looking for and how you're even a better fit. And like I said, because of that, it really led, if I look just kind of after the fact with the clients that this happened, to where they had a significantly better job opportunity that fit the lifestyle that they really wanted. And so that might not be the path you take at all. But what I'm saying is it's a lot less risky than you might think. In your head, you're like, oh my God, I've been doing this for 10 years. And it's like, I don't know if I'm set. I don't know if I can handle the risk, or I don't know what's going on here. Again, if you have a little bit of that buffer, and even if you go into a little bit of debt, having 6 months, having half a year to figure something out, that is a long time. And so a lot of times when you really put that in perspective and you really think about, okay, how much money do I have saved? How much money is this business making? Where's the profit margins? All these things come into play. Then you go, I can do this in 90 days. I can do this in 30 days. I can do this right now. What am I waiting for? instead of thinking like, oh, maybe in a year from now, it might be time to actually do this. And so if you're listening to this and you're thinking, you know what, Wade, I just got my first client, or I'm only, sporadically able to focus on the side biz, it's okay. Get started with tracking a little bit here. Make sure, they say cash is king, but I'm talking about use a debit card or a credit card or a bank account to really be able to electronically track everything, because it just makes things so much easier. I guess you could, save receipts or do this manually on an Excel sheet, but it's just, using things like mint.com, and there's international versions of that. Like having this all digitally tracked makes it so much easier for you to really see where the numbers are. And then start building this out. If you have this early, don't spend too much time. Like, number one, focus on sales, focus on building revenue, focus on honing in that angle and going out and getting more clients or selling more of your product. But it is important to track this stuff. I feel too often people, when they, I just get exposed to entrepreneurs all the time, and I'm networking and I meet people, so few people actually know their numbers. And then from that place, if you do this and you realize, hey, I'm not ready yet, or it might take me a lot longer than I expected, and I don't have any more time. How can I squeeze out? How can I be more productive? I have no time. What this does, it leads to better questions. Asking the question of, if I wanted to quit my job in the next 90 days and be able to do this full time, what would I need to do? If I don't have any more free time, how could I do it? And so there's a lot of creative solutions. A lot of times it's related to pricing and going, how could I charge 10x for what I'm doing? Or how could I create a service that would benefit my client or my customer 10 times as much? Because a lot of times when we focus on pricing, we're thinking about like, oh, how could I do more work? And then it's more valuable. And it's not about the work that you put in or how long it takes. It's about, what is this worth to the client? So if you're a social media manager, you're thinking, okay, I want to charge $5,000 a month. A lot of times it just comes down to marketing to someone that can afford that $5,000 a month, and then creating a service which doesn't need to take a lot of time, but that can offer that much value. Like I said, just choosing the right person, that alone, for me with, my chosen 20 clients, it's like one little thing. If you got a multi-7-figure business, could lead to $100,000 and, things changing. Another thing I see all the time is people either charging hourly, or they have sort of like low tier products, and they're like, okay, cool, this is nice, I'm making money online, but it's just, they're doing affiliate offers, or they got Tripwire products and stuff like that. What I always say, it's so much easier to grow a business in $3,000 chunks than $30 chunks. And so ask the question of, how could I create some sort of high ticket offer? How could I take myself out of comparing, if I'm, a web designer, comparing myself to the guy on Fiverr and going, that lives in Ukraine or the Philippines or something like that. And how could I position myself as an expert, as a consultant, or as a luxury product? And that gets me out of the commodity trap of thinking I need to price myself cheaper than the next person, and I can start charging multiples more. And a lot of it all just comes down to is positioning. And also, I think when you ask those questions of like, what would it take me to leave this job in 90 days? What would I need to get the business to level X or level Y, or to have this much savings? It leads to then going, okay, don't settle for anything less than that. Let's make this happen. What is it? We're in July or August now. What would it take for you in 2019, January 1, to be on your own and doing what you love full time? And a lot of times the answer is right in front of you. It's just the scary thing. Maybe it's going door to door. Maybe it's calling up local businesses. Maybe it's hiring that first outsourcer or a full-time employee because you don't have enough time yet because it's still the side hustle. Maybe it's asking high-level influencers or celebrities to help promote your offer. Maybe it's asking for more for what you're doing. You're afraid to lose those clients you already have, but you need to raise your prices. Again, it comes down to, what is the benefit that it offers the customer? It's not about how much work do you put in. And so what happens is, like I said, when you draw that line in the sand and you say, okay, it's time for me to make this happen, and not sit around for the next year or two until it slowly 10% kind of gradually builds up. What could I do to hit that inflection point where I can make this happen in 30 days? I can make this happen in 90 days. And so that leads to better questions. And hopefully I gave you a couple solutions to those questions. Boom. So this is a topic I think I'm going to come back to more, because I'm noticing, I'm getting more and more emails or PMs on Facebook about this, and really having that sort of freedom first mindset, the freedom first movement of going, let's put the lifestyle, let's put the freedom first, not settle for anything less than the life you ultimately want, and getting you there faster. So if you have any questions about this, hit me up on Facebook. It's probably the best way. I haven't actually asked in a while to do a little review. So, I'm pushing the podcast pretty hard, doing my first interviews next week. And so we're going to be starting doing it twice a week here pretty soon. And so I'd love to have you review the channel, The Wade Alter Show. Just head on over to iTunes, do that, give me a 5-star rating. And as always, enjoy.